Well, it's back and it's time for another Mountain Blade 2 developer blog, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the multiplayer and the troops that you're going to be able to play in the beta when it eventually comes out. So, let's get straight into the video. Quickly before I get into the video, make sure you check the links out into the description to go into Aniba Games. You can get some great deals on pretty much any game. I mean, Kingdom Comes Limited £17 and it's like 40 quid on Steam, so it's sort of a no-brainer. All the Total War games, pretty much any Steam games, but not even just Steam games, any platform, Xbox, PS4, whatever. You can click the links in the description and support the channel. I mean, Mountain Blade, the full collection is like £3 and that's got everything in, so I mean, you might as well. Make sure you go and use code RESONANT to get a 3% discount. Links in the description, and if you register now, which you don't have to, but you can, you also get another euro off it. So that's something you can do if you have the time and want to support the channel. First off, as we do know, the closed beta is well underway, being played by esports players and members in the community. It looks to be like they're adding more and more people in, so I can't wait for when they eventually make this available to the rest of us peasants. But while we're waiting, we have some interesting things about the multiplayer class system and the things and the troops and the loadouts that we're going to be able to use as selections and play as in the beta, basically. The class system is a selection of predefined loadouts, and you can choose from these when you spawn. It's a little bit different to how it was done in Warband, where it was really, you picked archer, infantry, cavalry, and then you had to pick their weapons and armor and things through the loadout. It's done a little bit differently. They're all predefined at the moment, but there is some customization in them, as we'll get onto later, and the reasoning why they've changed this to be more predefined loadouts to complete customization of the loadouts. In Bannerlord, the classes are divided into three distinct categories: infantry, ranged, and cavalry, as you might expect. Now, why are they all predefined? Because I know a lot of people may not like that. They may have preferred it to be completely customizable. Well, the reason is because of complete balance. Anyone knows that in Warband, eventually you all started off on the same page, but it began to become very much unbalanced. Of course, to start with, it was all about skill, how many kills you could get, all the points you could capturing and getting up on the walls of the siege towers, but eventually it started to become a sort of snowball effect, as we'll get onto a little bit later. I mean, think about it. The person that gets the more kills gets more money. With more money, you can buy better equipment and swords. So if you're really good at the beginning, get quite a few kills, then you're only going to get better and better. So it just comes down to a complete snowball effect, to the point where you're not going to be beaten if you keep getting better and better armor, because you keep getting more and more kills. So to keep that more balanced and sort of to keep everyone on the same level throughout the whole game, they're making sure that the loadouts are predefined. But they have to make sure that each class is a viable choice, not make one overwhelmingly better than another one, because that would almost make them completely obsolete and make no reason for them to actually be predefined, because someone would just use the best troop. And we've seen that in a lot of games. People try and go for the most powerful class, but this is not going to happen in Bannerlord, because each class has its own strengths and weaknesses, meaning no single class is particularly effective in every single scenario. One of the ranged guys from the Vlandians may be better when it comes to sieges, but in open battlefields they're going to be almost useless, especially when playing against the Kurzates. It's going to be a very mixed match situation where, yeah, you will get troops that will be better in each certain situations, but maybe a different one, they're going to be the weaker troops, balancing it all out in the end over the time and making a more dynamic type gameplay when it really comes down to skill and your choices, rather than actually just what armor you picked at the start of the game. Some classes though are clearly stronger and better equipped than others, as you might expect. I mean, we'll get onto the tier system a little bit later and how they actually do use points and money rather than how they did it on Warband, but it sort of comes down to the point with the more money, the better troops you'll be able to get, but it doesn't necessarily make them better in all instances. Yes, you might have more money that will be able to afford the highest level of troop in this sort of game, but they might completely change over time. They might be great in this open field battle, but when it comes to a siege, as I said, they could be completely useless. Also, they're much higher cost, which completely limits your options when it comes to respawning, as we'll get into a little bit later. You have money to respawn for that round, meaning that you might choose choose a really good troop then, but you might not have the money to choose a really good troop, and you might have to go a lighter troop when you next respawn. So you're going to have to pick when you use your stronger troops and when you decide not to. This approach puts a stronger emphasis on coordination and communication with our team. Maybe you have some partners or some people to play with, and you put your best fighters in your heaviest troop, and they spend their money on the heaviest troop that they can, and you put your weaker fighters in the lighter armor. Maybe then later on, when they get killed and hacked and slashed down, the guys that aren't so good at melee can then put on their stronger armor and choose the stronger troop later on down the line, because they've saved that money to do that sort of thing. Or maybe doing it the other way round. It sort of makes you able to communicate with your team in which troops you pick for each situation. Now, as I said, there is some customization available for you to actually do in the game. It's not all completely picked for you. We did mention quite a while ago there is a perk system. Now, this perk system allows players to slightly change their loadout if they desire, meaning that if you need to, if an enemy is completely destroying you, you can sort of choose the right perks to counter that. May it be faster firing, or stronger, or a little bit faster on the battlefield, or being a little bit stronger. It's those sort of things that really help you and try and counter the enemy, but there'll be nothing that overwhelmingly puts you ahead of the enemy. So you're not going to be able to pick a perk which basically means that you're indestructible to certain troops. It may give you an advantage of a certain class on the enemy's team that is causing you a bit of trouble, but then again, like I said, you have to really pick and choose when you use what perks along with when you use what loadouts throughout the game. Now, we did mention the money system and the points. It's really referred to as points in Bannerlord rather than in Warband where you had the money, but like I said, in Warband at the start of the game you would use your points to purchase gear for your character. You'd get more kills, you'd get more money, so you'd be able to get better equipment. And as I said, this sort of caused a snowball effect, which means the more kills, the better armor, then the more kills, then the better armor, until you're basically one of the most powerful people on the battlefield, and it sort of completely ruins the balance and the immersion for a lot of other players at that time. But in Bannerlord, it's not really used that way. They do mention some of the game modes, I'm not 100% sure, will feature a respawn system. I'm guessing this means there'll be some game modes like the battle mode, which, well, not the battle mode because that won't be in Bannerlord, but you'll have a one life system sort of thing. But the game modes that do feature a respawn system will force you to manage your points throughout a course of a round and determine which classes you'll have access to, the number of respawns that you have available. You can see in the screenshots, the cataphracts can't quite be afforded yet because they don't quite have the money, but you can get the lighter cavalry and so on. You'll be able to do that with different troops and different classes throughout the game. So maybe saving your money up to get a better class later on, but as it is nicely and balanced and they're all predefined loadouts, someone on the other team can get that exact loadout but sort of related to their faction, so it will be sort of balanced to do that. So it's not necessarily one person will have a lot better stuff than other ones. They'll all be accessible to everyone, each of these classes, which I think is a really nice way of doing it, but at the same time not completely taking you out of the immersion of the game. The entire focus of the gameplay is to put onto player skill and teamwork. This means that it's not just down to who has the best equipment or loadout, it is down to your teamwork and your skill as a fighter or a player throughout the game. Not necessarily just how many kills you can get, but how good are you at strategizing when you pick the better loadouts, when you save your money, and how you can communicate that with your teammates to get them to do it in conjunction with you. Because it's all well and good as you as a player on your own are able to really pick the best times to bring out the best loadouts and factions and weapons and things like that, but at the end of the day this is a game that is team player based, so you're going to have to work this out with the team to be much more effective than just being a solo Rambo on your own. As I mentioned, it does completely prevent this snowball effect in which the winning team just gets stronger with each consecutive round win. That is not something that will be in this game. It will be completely even and just coming down to your skill and your team player base throughout the rounds. Now let's get on to a little bit about the factions though, because it's not going to be the same loadouts for every single faction, of course, that wouldn't really make sense, but while balancing it, they're trying to keep a bit of the lore from the single player. There'll be strengths and weaknesses of the classes, taking into account the strengths and weaknesses of the faction as a whole. For example, the Kurzates we know are really good horse archers, nomadic cavalry. They'll automatically be stronger in the multiplayer when it comes to picking a horse unit than, let's say, the Sturgians. But maybe you have a lot weaker infantry as the Kurzates from the get-go, so maybe picking them is a little bit riskier if you're wanting to do an infantry-based game. game. So that's something that you're going to have to looking out for. But it's nice that they're linking the multiplayer into the single player lore and not completely separating the two. So the more you play the single player and get to know the factions, the better experience and the better choices you're going to make in the multiplayer. You can tailor your loadouts to counter this from your faction knowledge. For example, if you load into a game and you can see that you're playing against an archer heavy faction, maybe bigger shield infantry and cavalry are your best bets from this get-go when you're spawning in, so they're the best things to choose. Or if you spawn in and you see a cavalry heavy faction playing against you, maybe you decide to go into the realms of the spear infantry and looking to see the best option in them from the get-go, rather than going and picking maybe cavalry yourself, since you know you're going to be weaker from the get-go against that faction anyway. All in all though, it really just completely makes the multiplayer of Mount & Blade a lot more balanced. I love the way they're doing it, and I just love how they're taking the lore from the single player and bringing it into the multiplayer. How each faction not necessarily is completely balanced in all areas, but they have counters to each other. So in a bigger picture, yes, it is more balanced, but not necessarily in each instance. So picking your right troop, your right points to spend in each instance is going to be the most important thing on the battlefield. And then, as we said, it comes down to team skill and playing with your wits and your melee superiority. But that's pretty much it for this week's Bannerlord developer blog. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a like on the video if you would like to do such a thing. But make sure you leave comments down below on what do you think about the changes of the multiplayer, and what are you going to be playing as when we get into the beta, hopefully in the next year or so. I think that would be really exciting if they announce something at Gamescom to do with the open beta. That would be incredible. But of course, let's not try and hold our hopes up too much. We have been disappointed before, and it's not worth going through that again. Hold me, daddy. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and until then, I will see you in the next one.